So I saw him. So I was there. That's,
House Speaker now?
she married. I don't think she was. Yeah, she was single.
No,
No kids.
say what? Yeah. The Speaker Cutler selected, he had a second is nominated.
That's interesting.
That was probably reflecting it, so very cool.
Probably on the same time Judge Judy's on, so I probably didn't see it.
All set, Ed?
Oh, okay.
All set? All set.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. President.
Are you muting it? Are you muting it?
A little bit. Good evening, everybody. I'm calling this meeting of the Lower Allen Township Board of Commissioners of June 22nd, 2020, regular meeting to order. Proof of publication is available if you care to see it. We begin our meetings with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Prior to getting started, I'll make note that I spoke with Commissioner Holtzman this evening, and she appeared very ill, and she sends her regrets that she's not going to be able to be here this evening, and I would encourage everyone to keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And she could probably maybe use a phone call if you feel up to it. So we'll pray. We pray this day to give thanks for all the many blessings bestowed upon our township. Watch over us who are entrusted with the administration of this township. Create in us the earnest desire to serve faithfully, and permit us to experience the joys of noble service completed for our residents. Encourage cooperation from those who are served and from those who serve. Help us to use every willing service and effort put forth for good government. Heavenly Father, we ask guidance to help us as commissioners to make the right decisions. We ask that you aid our staff as they perform the daily tasks of running our township, and we request that you be by our first responders' side as they protect our residents and see that they return home safe at the end of each day. In your name we pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, fellow commissioners, in our packets this week, again, we received the meeting minutes from the prior meeting of June 8th, 2020, and I'd be looking for a motion if there are no corrections or additions or comments on the minutes.
Move we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from June 8th, 2020. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Next, this evening we have two resolutions that we're going to be passing, recognizing length of service for two of our employees. The first this evening is we're going to be looking to adopt resolution 2020-R20, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Lower Allen Township recognizing Barry Zook, who I believe is here with us this evening. Hi, Barry. For 35 years of service to the citizens of Lower Allen Township. I'm going to, at this point, while later in our agenda we're going to give commendations to the folks for their years of service and their other folks for their service to Lower Allen Township. I'm going to take this moment to actually read the resolution if you allow me. A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Lower Allen Township, Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, recognizing Barry E. Zook. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of Lower Allen Township desires to express its recognition and gratitude for 35 years of service provided by Barry E. Zook. And whereas Barry E. Zook first joined Lower Allen Township in 1985 as a laborer in the Public Works Department, and whereas Barry E. Zook was promoted to the position of Equipment Operator number 2 in 1997, which has been renamed Maintenance Specialist. And whereas Barry E. Zook has received many letters of appreciation for a variety of reasons, now hereby resolve that a sincere gratitude, Barry, and appreciation be and are hereby extended to you for your 35 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Lower Allen Township, Cumberland County, and that this recognition be spread upon the minutes and records of Lower Allen Township for perpetuity. This is a resolution will be adopted. We'll be asking to adopt this resolution today, 22nd of June, 2020.
Make a motion that we approve Resolution 2020-R20 as read by our president.
Second.
I have a motion on the question of this resolution and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Barry. And we have a letter and a commendation letter for you in a little bit if you'll hang on. We have another length of service recognition this evening, resolution for Barry Harshbarger, who's with us. I'm sorry, Brian, my apologies. Brian Harshbarger, who's with us this evening. I will also read that prior to taking any action, should we feel the need. A resolution of the Board of Commissioners, Lower Allen Township, Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, recognizing Brian R. Harshbarger, whereas the Board of Commissioners of Lower Allen Township desires to express its recognition and gratitude for 25 years of service provided by Brian R. Harshbarger. And whereas Brian R. Harshbarger joined Lower Allen Township in 1995 as a laborer in the Public Works Department, and whereas Brian R. Harshbarger was promoted to the position of Highway Superintendent in 2014 in the Public Works Department, and whereas Brian R. Harshbarger was promoted to the position of Public Works Coordinator in 2019 in the Public Works Department, and whereas Brian R. Harshbarger has received many letters of appreciation for a variety of reasons, now hereby resolve that sincere gratitude and appreciation by and hereby are extended to Brian R. Harshbarger for his 25 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Lower Allen Township, Cumberland County, and that this recognition be spread upon the minutes and records of Lower Allen Township for perpetuity. Adopt this resolution into this 22nd day of June 2020. So I would be looking for a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-R21 for Brian's 25 years of service.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. And Mr. Manager, would you care to, in each of these, care to share what the awards will be for that type of length of service and for these gentlemen?
Sure. Do you want to start with them since they are here? Sorry, I didn't turn my mic up. Yeah, we can cover Barry and Brian first. So Barry, being 35 years, which is a phenomenal achievement and benchmark for anybody to work in one place for 35 years. Barry receives not only a mention in the township newsletter, his letter of commendation, which we will receive in a second, and the resolution, but also recognition on the township's website, a bonus of 1 extra week's pay, and a $100 Visa gift card to be used as he chooses.
Barry, I'm going to read this commendation letter to you. This correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. You have been a real asset to Lower Allen Township since you joined us 35 years ago. In those 35 years, you have contributed skill, time, ideas, energy, and loyalty. We have noticed and appreciated all these contributions. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It is with great pleasure that I issue this commendation letter honoring your 35 years of service to Lower Allen Township, sincerely signed by me. But this signature represents all of us, that we are very heartfelt to your loyal dedication to the citizens of the township. And in this packet as well is your awards. Okay, thank you very much. Want to go around and shake everybody's hand? Or fist bump, sorry. My bad. Shake something. Not required, by the way. My apologies. You can do a salute, Brian.
Oh, she was. Yeah. While coming to town park.
Brian, would you like to come up?
If you move over that way, I can get the thing.
There you go.
This way? Okay. I don't want you to get my back.
Brian's correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. Over your tenure at Lower Allen, you've grown in responsibility and tasks as a Public Works Coordinator within the Public Works Department. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It's with great pleasure that I issue this commendation letter honoring your 25 years of service to Lower Allen Township. Sincerely, honestly, thank you for everything you do for us. And your awards are in there as well. And to both of you, this is a difficult time to come up on your years of service for this, but we truly appreciate everything that you guys have done. And I know that Commissioner Shin and Commissioner Black have been here for quite some time. Know you guys far more than some of us newer commissioners do. And so we hear great stories about all of our long-term employees here, and we really appreciate your service. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
enough. Good.
Thank you. Been great working with all of you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, I'll just tell everybody here what Brian gets for 25 years of service, in addition to his letter of commendation and his resolution. He also gets mentions on the township's newsletter and website. He gets a large, either a personalized gift or a day spa that he can use during workday, and a $300 bonus, and the most prized award of all, lunch with me.
Oh, wow.
I had that today.
Take it to the Pepto-Bismol.
Bring your wallet. Wherever you want to go, yeah. I didn't say I was buying, I just said you got the.
So thanks again, fellas, for your service. We have some more commendation letters that those folks are not joining us this evening. However, I would like to read them, especially if they're watching us, and thank them for their service as well. And these packets will get to them after tonight's meeting. The first is for Tina Harbold in our finance department. She's an administrative clerk for us here at Lower Allen Township. So I'll read her commendation letter. Dear Tina, this correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. Over your tenure at Lower Allen, you've grown in responsibility and tasks as an administrative clerk within the finance department. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It is with great pleasure that I issue you this commendation letter honoring your 5 years of service to Lower Allen Township. Tina, thank you very much for your service to us. The next commendation letter will be to Ryan Turpin in the Public Works Department. He's a maintenance specialist here at Lower Allen Township. Dear Ryan, this correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. Over your tenure at Lower Allen, you've grown in responsibility and tasks as a maintenance specialist within the Public Works Department. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It is with great pleasure that I issue this commendation letter honoring your 5 years of service to Lower Allen Township. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Next is to Kenneth Sterling in the police department. He's a patrol officer here in Lower Allen Township. Dear Officer Sterling, this correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. Over your tenure at Lower Allen, you've grown a responsibility and task as a patrol officer within the police department. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It is with great pleasure that I issue this commendation letter honoring your 5 years of service to Lower Allen Township. Thank you, Kenneth. And last, but, oh wait, not last. Next, Brian Rennie in the police department. Brian's a patrol officer here in Lower Allen Township. Dear Officer Rennie, your correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. Over your tenure at Lower Allen, you've grown a responsibility and tasks as a patrol officer within the police department. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It is with great pleasure that I issue this commendation letter to you honoring your 5 years of service in Lower Allen Township. Thank you, officer, for your service. Now, last and certainly not least, to Scott Emerson, Maintenance Department. He's our facilities manager here in Lower Allen Township. Dear Scott, this correspondence is written as a commendation letter for your years of service to Lower Allen Township. Over your tenure at Lower Allen, you've grown a responsibility and tasks as a facilities manager within the Maintenance Department. Your commitment and dedication have not gone unnoticed. It is with great pleasure that I issue you this commendation letter honoring your 20 years of service to Lower Allen Township. Thank you, Scott. And with each one of these, there are like a gift as well, correct? Okay.
Gifts of varying value.
Okay, great. So I will, at the end of the meeting, hand these back over to the manager, and he will make sure they get to the appropriate personnel. So thanks you again, everybody, for your years of service, and I appreciate your understanding if I pronounced your names incorrectly.
You did pretty well, actually.
Did I do all right? The only thing I did notice was, I think it's the first time I've seen a Scott spelled with one T. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Moving on in our agenda this evening is audience participation of any item on the agenda. And at this point, I'll ask, is there anybody that's with us this evening that is looking to participate on any item on our agenda? Yes, sir.
I'm here for a plan, John Murphy, Alpha Consulting Engineers, on your agenda under 11B.
11B, and your name again, sir?
John Murphy.
Mr. Murphy, John Murphy is here to discuss 11B under the Township Engineer. And when we get to that, sir, I'm sure, thank you, fellas, have a good night. I'm sure that the engineer will make sure that you come up at the appropriate time to the podium. Thank you.
My name is Albert Ristamaya. I'm here for this minor lot line adjustment under 11C.
11C, and your name again, sir?
Albert Ristamaya.
Albert Ristamine? Okay, Albert. So again, after we get through 11B, when we get to that, I'm sure our engineer will make sure that you come up at the appropriate time if necessary. Thank you. Seeing no more, we're going to move on at this point to our consent agenda. Any commissioner, staff member, anyone else in attendance who would like to have an item on the consent agenda removed for further discussion can request so now. Is there a request to have any item on the consent agenda removed? And those items include department reports for the month of May and our tax collector report for May 2020. Hearing nothing further on that, I would be looking to for a motion to accept and approve the items on our consent agenda, which are listed as follows, and that is our department reports for the month of May, engineer, facilities maintenance, public safety, community and economic development, and public works, and under B, our tax collector's report for the month of May 2020.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question regarding approving the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next, under your president, I have two items this evening. One is the check register for June 19th in the amount of $241,750.67. I'd be looking for a motion to approve that amount on the check register.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next, be looking to accept the motion to approve the release of police officer Nicole Boldusser, thank you, from probationary status effective July 2nd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz and a second from Vice President Black. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And I beg your pardon, I do have a C under number 9 this evening, and that is to accept the motion to approve the release of police officer Jonathan Newcomer from probationary status effective July 2nd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Next, moving on, any business pertinent to the township, discussions will be limited to 15 minutes per person, and this is just general information, anything that you either want to share or discuss regarding the township. Is there anyone that would like to discuss anything regarding the township this evening? That's not on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to our township engineer.
All right, good evening. Under 11A, I'm actually filling in for Mrs. Trone, who's away this week, talking about grant application, and this is primarily for your information. No action is required by the board this evening. She did provide a memo on this is the Land Partnership Grant Program through Cumberland County. They are opening up grant applications, and there are two projects that ranked very highly in our pedestrian bicycle study. And you'll hear more about these. We are also applying for grants for both of these through HATS, Harrisburg Area Transportation Study. Those grants are 80-20 grants, so we are applying through the county program for the additional 20% match, and they do allow that to use the county program to match the state program. So the two projects are at 18th Street and Hummel Avenue to upgrade pedestrian access through there and add a blank out no turn on red sign, upgrade the crosswalk. That was identified in the ped bike study as an area that people were really interested in using but did not feel comfortable using as pedestrians. And then the second is on Wesley Drive at Royal Drive, which is the entrance to Wasp Park. This has been an area of concern for a number of years because it is the connection between a pretty large residential area and Wasp Park, and the road is quite busy and the speeds are a little high there. There are crosswalks in place. This would be to upgrade those and to install the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at those crosswalks. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on those.
I have a question, Mr. President.
Commissioner Shin, go ahead.
Dan, what is a piano key style?
The standard crosswalk is the two lines that are 6 inches that run this way. Piano key is the larger ones that are 24 inches wide, and they go perpendicular rather than parallel. There's a couple different names for them, continental crosswalk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dan, you said this is just informational purposes. Are you
Correct.
seeking some action?
No, there's no action required
Oh.
at this point.
Okay. And you'll put something together for a future meeting?
Uh,
Or
if-
is it really
If
unnecessary?
there is a need, some grant programs require resolution of the board. I'm not
Gotcha.
sure if we'll need one for this or not.
Okay. Are there any further questions from the board? Okay. Moving on.
Okay. Item B is subdivision land development docket 2020-08, land development plan for IMT LLC, revised plan on Audubon Road. And give you a little orientation here up on the screen. This is Route 15 and the Wesley Drive interchange. This is the dairy farmers plant here. Gettysburg Road, Audubon Road, and the subject parcel is right here. Some know it as the former Strawberry Patch. It's the parcel at the end of Audubon Road. This may sound familiar because there was a land development plan approved here a few months ago, and what they came back to do, what they would like to do is change the orientation of the building. Had they made that decision a little sooner, we could have just handled it as a plan change, and they wouldn't have to be back here. But because they expedited their plan after it was approved and got it recorded at the courthouse, we needed to have a revised land development plan so that the plan of record at the courthouse is accurate. So this is the plan currently proposed. The only real difference is where the building is here along the eastern property line. Now, originally it was located here across the southern property line, more parallel to Route 15. It's the same building, the same size building, just the orientation has changed 90 degrees. So instead of the building being here, it's over here. It necessitated just a little bit of additional work on the site drainage to make sure that when the drainage leaves the property, it's as it should be and does not cause an undue impact on the adjacent property, but it does not change any of the impervious coverage from what was previously approved, which is in fact reducing the impervious area of what's there now. And John Murphy had indicated he's here as the engineer for the plan. Do you have any questions for him or for me?
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I'd like to note, as the Planning Commission liaison, I attended the meeting where this was considered and concur with the Commission's recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was going to be my question, if these were the two that made it through the Planning Commission this last month.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no further questions, I mean, I'd be looking to approve this plan this evening.
Mr. President, I would move to approve SLD docket number 2020-08, Land Development Plan for IMT LLC revised plan at 1025 Audubon Road, proposed construction of a 2,785 square foot storage building.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, item C is a minor subdivision plan. It's a lot line adjustment for the lots at 3 Neponset Lane and 28 Scarsdale Drive. You see on the aerial here, this is in the Ross Moyne Manor neighborhood. This is Neponset Lane here, Scarsdale Drive, Briar Lane, and this is the address at 3 Neponset. This is the address at, or the parcel at 28 Scarsdale. So you can see the configuration in the rear, just the way that they were originally lined up. You know, it's as diagonal, it kind of appears that there's a piece cut off and missing there, and that it's on this property here. So what the property owners have agreed to do is to move the property line, which is currently here, over to here. And then this piece, which currently, in that triangle, currently is part of 28 Scarsdale, would become part of 3 Neponset. There's no actual construction proposed with this, no additional lots, just a transfer of this area from one lot to another. Albert Oristamayan is here as one of the owners of 3 Neponset. He initiated the plan, so if you have any questions for him or for me, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Mr. President, I do concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation and would be prepared to move should the President wish to entertain such a motion.
I have a motion on the question of approving this plan. Are there any other questions at this point, though?
I would second the motion.
Didn't hear a motion.
Oh, I apologize.
He would make a motion.
Oh, okay.
So
I beg your pardon.
I apologize for being switched.
So I do have a motion and a second on the question, and therefore, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We're all just, including myself, I'm a little, so, thank you.
Steve, you can bring the lights up if you want. Thanks. And item 11D, this is a request for payment, invoice number 2, on the Gettysburg Road relocation project for JVI Group. Work is continuing on, and they continue to expend the funds. Happy to answer any questions.
So, are there any questions regarding this invoice for $194,467.22?
Dan, this has been a long time coming. Have you or your staff been inspecting this work and it's okay?
There's full-time inspection out there with a consulting firm. Yes.
Okay.
Well, Mr. President, I was going to ask the question during Commissioner reports, but I'd rather ask it now. So is the old Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Road, is the old Gettysburg Road extended? Is that street going to stay? We've had the flooding issues, because we're creating that new road, what's it called?
So it'll be Century Drive.
Century Drive,
Yeah.
yeah.
There will be a piece of the existing road removed from Wesley Drive up to the first driveway to the dairy farmers. That piece of road will be removed, a few hundred feet, because that's where the water channel will then cross over the road.
So it's at the far end.
Yeah, it's at Gettysburg Road, so it's the near end if you're sitting here.
If you're sitting on Wesley Drive.
Yeah. Wesley Drive, that will be a three-way intersection. There will be no Gettysburg Road on the
Okay,
other
so
side
you
of
won't-
Wesley Drive.
You won't be, okay, so you won't be moving in off Wesley Drive into the Gettysburg Road anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's been going on for so long that I jumped my memory to try to figure out what it really meant.
I can bring it up on here if you'd like. That would help explain it.
You lifted the lights too soon.
So you can see the right-of-way line there where the new road will be. So from this point here at Wesley Drive up to this driveway here, this part will go away.
Okay.
Because the stream channel that currently goes across the road and over the road will stay on this side of the road. There'll be pipes underneath the new road that will stay along here, and then when that piece of road is removed, it will cross over into the existing drainage
Okay.
channel.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. President, I certainly would make the motion if you're ready for it.
Yes, sir.
To approve payment of invoice number 2 to JVI Group Incorporated in the amount of $194,467.22 for the Gettysburg Road relocation project.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you.
And next, Community and Economic Development, we have one item, it looks like, and Mr. Eby, I think, is handling this.
Yes, good evening, thank you. All right, so in preparation for this discussion, I conferred with Tom around noon today, and I prepared a little discussion guide that you should find at your seat. Does everyone have one? It's a memo from me dated today for the discussion of the zoning ordinance proposal to revise and clarify regulations for displaying election campaign and opinion signs on private property. Okay, so proceeding, the background, this initially came up October of last year. We had discussion at your regular meeting, October 14, regarding the policy to enforce the existing regulations, and we were discussing election campaign signs and rights-of-way. You decided to maintain our existing policy and directed staff to prepare some possible revisions. So at your subsequent meetings, March 9 and May 26, we had discussion, and that culminated in a decision or a consensus at your last meeting, June 8, to continue the existing enforcement policy and to opt not to amend the sign code to allow election campaign signs in rights-of-way, and that was after a thorough vetting of the constitutional free speech challenge where all signs must be content neutral. you also decided that you would have further discussion on election campaign and opinion signs on private property at a subsequent date, which is tonight. The current problem we discussed way back in October and subsequently was that the current sign tables don't make it readily apparent and clear to our customers and our staff what the rules actually are. So we had previously tweaked the sign tables a bit for discussion purposes. And I'm going to note that the drafted changes we made reflect current and longstanding interpretations and regulations. So we've heard divergent opinions from the commissioners as far as maintain status quo, maybe make some modification to the rules, or only regulate these signs to the extent that they might impact public safety if the signs aren't properly displayed. So we have a broad range of opinions among the commissioners. So with that said, there were some documents in your packet. Tom had revised the draft ordinance that Steve originally prepared, so that we're no longer stating that we're going to allow election campaign signs in public rights-of-way. But we should state in Section 1 the purpose. We're going to amend all three tables, I think, it would be appropriate, because the tables cross-reference one another and be more apparent what the rules are. And if you decide you want to make some changes to the signs that are allowed on private property, then we'll add something to Section 1 of the ordinance to state specifically what it is. The notice of public hearing, I'm simply noticing that the abbreviation of what the ordinance does says it revises the sign tables, plural. So we do want to tweak all the tables. Even if you decide you don't want to make any changes, it would be a good idea to tweak the tables to make it clearer what the rules are for these types of signs. Tom also included an annotated copy of all the sign tables. There's signs by zoning district, and you might recall from prior discussion, I mentioned that in residential districts, you're allowed one sign per use. Well, supporting a candidate or an opinion isn't really a use of the property, so we added footnote 12, and again, footnote 12 says that election campaign and opinion signs are permitted in all zoning districts, in addition to signs pertaining to the use of buildings and property. And we used the existing limit of one sign per opinion or candidate, and we said that they must be displayed in accordance with applicable regulations in the sign tables. So whether you decide to make no changes, make these signs unlimited, or anywhere in between, once we have discussion, we'll gladly make the proper adjustments. The next is sign table by sign type. And we had discussed at staff level adding election campaign and opinion signs as a sign type, again, to cross-reference and make things more apparent. And then on the sign ordinance temporary sign table, I believe Tom added at the very end, all zoning districts, opinion and election signs are permitted with no time limit, see previous table. So that's just walking you through some documents that would be impacted by any change that you would authorize. So that's my background and reference documents. I did have a discussion guide prepared that Tom and I looked at for your meeting of May 26, and we never really got to it. So on the flip side of that document I gave you are some bullet points for election campaign and opinion signs that are currently permitted on private property. These are existing rules, and they're permitted in all zoning districts without a permit, and you must display them in accordance with the height and area limits contained in the tables. So at that juncture, I guess I would be turning it back to President Vallone if he wishes to steer the conversation or designate a staff member, but these bullet points, I believe, will help you get through the questions of what changes you might want to consider.
Well, Mr. Eby, thank you for certainly making this as simple as it could possibly be to get through it and talk about it tonight. So I just have some thoughts. And the first is, I'm really thrilled that in the end, at least the staff's in agreement that what the residents or any other stakeholders in the township that are bound by our ordinances it'd be easier for them to understand what we're asking of them through our ordinances. That I think has always been part has made, if there were issues, made it somewhat worse because people just don't understand, and we wind up maybe chasing, being behind the 8 ball sometimes as residents. So I think that that's terrific. As far as making the changes, we came from the right-of-way issue. I think we all made it clear last 2 weeks ago that we were going to kind of let that not go, but we were going to kind of maintain what we have. And then we did get guidance as asked by the manager on what the staff is directed to do regarding campaign signs moving forward in the right-of-ways. So that should also clarify some things, which should make things a little easier moving forward for everybody to understand and get through. Now we're to the personal property signs. And my big question here is this, and I guess it's directed to the solicitor, is what is, I mean, when we start talking about residences, I've heard from various sources that the Supreme Court decision has said that, that with the spirit of that is there's no restrictions, essentially. That on personal residence outside of site and stuff like that. And then I hear that the townships and the municipalities can restrict size and things of that nature. So if it turns out that we wind up in agreement or we wind up settling on that there is the ability for the township to have restrictions, my view is that we should at least update our restrictions, probably in most cases here, relaxing some of them, if that's the case where we can make restrictions on private property, that we should update them to be reasonable with what today's expectations are from our residents and people that are bound by our ordinances. And my example is, and I use this example with Mr. Eby, is it's so easy to go out and buy I'm just going to say a POW 3x5 flag with grommets in it, and people hang those. And it's very easy, and they've become more popular, just like the basic $3 to $5 3x5 flag that you can buy on eBay for $5 with probably free shipping. Okay, they're so easy to buy. You see them at all the festivals, and as of the last several years, you see them, the people who are manufacturing these, printing campaign versions of these, and they're hanging them on their fences, and that, I'm understanding, based on my inquiry, is a sign. So I think it's reasonable to say that our expectations of our residents have probably changed from just this idea that they only should have a certain size sign that's been ingrained in what we believe is the campaign era, or the campaign standard. And so I'm not so sure if we can have restrictions, if a billboard's the right thing, because I don't personally believe that, but I think that we should be reasonable with regard to what we believe is the expectation of our residents, if we can make restrictions. So
Was there a question in there?
Sorry, I guess what my question, yes, my question is can the municipality actually make these restrictions on private property? Because that
Yes.
seems to be in question.
Yes. No, I think the Reed case says that regulation is still permissible. And I think that, the jumping off point from where you are right now is a very standard ordinance. I mean, that you have, as John was suggesting, limits on size, one sign per candidate, one sign per opinion. I think that is what many municipalities do, and I think that is something that courts would uphold. Obviously, you can be, more permissive. In other words, the court will always let you do more. I think just to give you the history, since I've been solicitor, previous boards were really tough on signs. I mean, I think 20 years ago, people didn't like signs. We had duration limits. We had many more restrictions than we do now. The ordinance has evolved a great deal. Those duration limits have been removed, but you generally, I think, have been consistent in keeping smaller signs in residential zones, which I think is typical. And I think that those limits on number have been in there. And I think that's what John was clarifying in his table. But you don't have to do it that way. You obviously can be less restrictive, and that's really a policy call.
Okay. So if we can be restrictive, the question then becomes, where do we want to relax, if we do want to relax any of it, and to what level regarding numbers and size?
And I just think that the courts generally, they, would allow more restriction in residential districts because there is some, and again, that's why I think you need to have a public hearing, because I may be wrong, and maybe that's not a concern anymore. But, the courts will look to, neighborhood preservation of property values as a reasonable public purpose. And so that's really where they have size limitations and number limitations. Obviously, open areas, industrial areas, commercial areas, it's less important. Obviously, you can have political signs on billboards. If you have the money, you may advertise that way. So, that is a restriction that billboards are regulated both by municipalities and the state, but you can have very large political signs along major highways.
Right. And then the other question is, do we really have a problem? I mean, I think there's been one instance in the last couple of years, from what I'm going to understand, that we actually asked somebody to remove a sign and it had to do with a safety issue. Okay? And so I'm wondering, do we even have a problem making any changes other than making it easier for people to understand what the expectations are of them? So, I mean, I guess we should just open this up for discussion and maybe try to put this to rest tonight a little bit if we can. That's all.
One of the helpful things to do as you move forward is go with John's discussion guide, because it's kind of not really a flow chart, but it kind of asks several questions that need to be answered for what these restrictions are going to be in the chart. So it'll ask you, for example, how many signs do you think is proper? Should we increase it, decrease it, keep it the same? Same thing with number of faces, same thing with uses, same thing with size.
Okay, so if we take these down one bullet point at a time, do you favor continuing to limit the number of such signs to one per candidate or opinion? And that, I guess, is our opening discussion point.
Mr. President, if no one else is interested, I'll go first, I suppose. In my mind, Mr. President, the limit to one sign per candidate or opinion frankly doesn't make sense. At any given time, you have half a dozen candidates or half a dozen different offices up for election. So to say, well, you can have 6 signs if they're all for different offices, but you can't have more than one for the same office, frankly, I don't think it makes sense. Second, Mr. President, I believe the Constitution and the First Amendment gives me a right to free speech. And a political sign is my opinion on speech. And if I have a yard where I have ample room to display such signs, I think I should be able to do so. Thirdly, Mr. President, I would say that not all residential districts are created equal, in that we have places that are huge plots of land that are zoned residential, and we have very small units that are zoned residential. And I don't think it'd be fair to limit everyone in a residential district just because of their zoning, when they might have plenty of acreage to put multiple signs. We had brought up corner lots in the past. I think that's another thing to consider. And my comments on this particular issue were to not limit the number of signs. Frankly, I don't think we have an issue with people putting up a number of signs, and I think regardless of whether or not we have the authority to do, I just think it's the right thing to do to let people express themselves and enjoy their constitutional liberties.
Okay.
And I disagree that we are destroying anyone's constitutional rights by limiting the number of signs. I would like to see, I have already conceded to 4 signs per residential property, and I have made my feelings heard that I think they should be limited to relatively small signs, 2 by 3 feet, 6 square feet on a face. I am concerned about the integrity of our residential neighborhoods, and of course, as you realize, in an election year, if we allow unlimited number of signs, we're going to have clutter in some yards for a minimum of 2 months.
Mr. President, in response, I would say, I don't think we've seen that issue in the past. I don't think we've seen an issue where people even have more than 4 of the same sign. So I don't see why there needs to be a limit. Now, moving forward for the public, I think, and unless yourself or Commissioner Shin has any other comments, I think 4 would be the minimum limit for consensus, as Mr. Eby is taking notes. It sounds like everyone's, and I don't want to speak for you both, so please chime in, but would favors 4 as the minimum to go to the public hearing. Of course, I would like to be on record as favoring no enumerated limit, but for staff's ease and of purpose for planning, 4 might be a good one to pencil in there, unless Commissioner Shin, you have any
Is
comments?
that 4 signs per candidate, or?
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, if there were, God forbid, well, there were seven candidates running, I could have put 1 sign for each.
You could.
Yeah, Vice President Black, I read with interest, and now you've verbalized that the integrity of the, what does that mean? Integrity of the area?
Keeping a residential neighborhood uncluttered and maintaining the value of our residential neighborhoods.
So you're talking about aesthetics, basically?
To a certain extent, we've already taken care of my most concern of safety by keeping the signs out of the right-of-way. So at this point, it's an aesthetic issue.
I don't think we have the right to zone for aesthetics.
I'll defer to the solicitor, but I think our presentation 2 weeks ago indicated that I think multiple of the Supreme Court decisions in that case absolutely say you could regulate for aesthetic
Okay.
and community value.
Okay.
And that's
I mean,
really,
we
that's
can-
really the purpose of the limitation of home size.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Numbers.
Regardless of whether we have the authority, I think we have 2 commissioners who've just indicated our desire not to zone based on aesthetics. So I would also point out that other council might differ on opinion of that, and other constitutional law experts might differ on opinion, and the fact that there's no majority opinion in that case, I'm not going to take it as dispositive.
So under this scenario, I just want to make sure I fully understand the 4 limit minimum. And again, this is just getting us to a hearing. The 4 limit to go to the hearing would be that if there were 5 candidates, in theory, you could have 20 signs in your yard.
That's not what I intend, a total of 4.
Okay. So you're saying a total, grand total of all the campaigns, the grand total through the entire election cycle?
Correct.
And Mr. President, I would oppose that. My understanding would be 4 signs per candidate would be acceptable as a limit just for going to the public hearing, though I am opposed to that limit for the record. However, again, at any given time, I mean, just think of the municipal election last year, you had 2 county commissioner seats, well, 3 county commissioner seats open, in addition to a district attorney and a treasurer, and 2 judge seats and 3 township commissioner seats. If you want to have a sign for each one of those candidates, for each one of those offices, you ought to be able to. If you're someone in the neighborhood that people look to for opinions on who to vote for, and they value your opinion and take it seriously, I think you should be able to have those signs in your yard. If you want to have a sign for 12 different candidates in your yard, because that's how many different candidates are on the ballot, that's great, but you shouldn't have to choose between which offices and which candidates you can support on your yard and which ones you can't.
And that's not what you're saying, though, is it?
He's saying 4 total.
I'm saying 4 total.
Okay. Yeah, I would have to disagree with that.
So I
Because I've had 5 or 6 in my yard
right.
already.
So I don't know if we're going to get stuck here. I don't agree with the actual 4 cap because of the, sometimes you might be looking, there might be 7 people in our precinct, getting elected. You'd have to pick between campaigns or races. That I'm not in agreement with that, but I'm actually okay with addressing the corner lot issue with regard to 2 per candidate as a minimum. So I'm not sure where that brings us to get to what we advertise, but I would say I'm not sure we're going to get.
Well, let me suggest each, and I know Mr. Eby may differ with this, each candidate would be a separate use. Okay, so if you don't limit the uses, you could put a sign for each candidate if you would like. If there's 12 people running, you have 12 signs out there, and then limit the number for the same use to 1 or 2. So they would be able to put out at least 1 sign for every candidate running for every office if they wanted, but no more than 2 for the same person.
So I would be in favor of bringing that to hearing and see what the public think. I mean, in the end, I really just want to hear what the public thinks about this issue.
John, does that sound like it would be acceptable? Sorry, I make you get up, but.
That's okay, I need the exercise. Haven't played hockey in 3 months. All right, so what I'm hearing is for purposes of the staff drafting something to go to public hearing, after some discourse here, there's different opinions, but I just heard that there would be a limit of not more than 2 signs per candidate or opinion, because we're also talking about, like, you might have a sign for a social issue or some economic issue on your property in addition to a candidate. So if we said not more than X signs per candidate or opinion, I'm hearing a compromise discussion here of 2 to go to public hearing.
Right. With Commissioner Kutz, I mean, I understand.
Understanding that
respectfully
there's-
understand his objection to being on the record,
Right.
not liking that, but to get the hearing.
But if the objective tonight is to get consensus of what gets in a draft ordinance, which you could maybe have another crack at, and then authorize us to go to public hearing and start the planning agency comments, I'm going to then make the note that it is, for the purpose of that document, not more than 2 per candidate or issue at this point, just to get it out to public hearing. Is that correct?
Mr. President, if I'm coming down from no limit, I think perhaps we could meet at 3. Would that be amenable to that? 3 per candidate?
Except for rare occasions, and I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking of that beautiful farm.
I live right by it, I drive by it every day. If they want to put 10 signs up.
But I have trouble thinking of that as a residential anyway, quite honestly. There is 1 house on that road, or 2, maybe 3.
Well, if that's the thinking that large properties ought to have more signs, there was discussion at a prior meeting. You could say, 1 sign per issue or candidate per X feet of street frontage. And that takes into account a corner lot too, because a corner lot has 2 street frontages. So if you want to make it,
Well, and that takes into account the tighter neighborhoods as well, with smaller yards, which would maybe help to compromise on the.
Say that again,
clutter
John?
issue.
okay.
Kinda like-
So I'm kind of assimilating this and morphing back to prior discussion. We had prior discussion about, well, what if you were allowed to have a higher number of signs if you had a large street frontage property? So if you want to say, okay, arbitrarily, one sign per issue or candidate per X feet of road frontage, it could be 100, it could be 50, it could be whatever, that would be a way to deal with it so that it's of scale, so that someone doesn't have a huge pile of signs on a tiny property, and then you have a big farm that's only allowed the same number of signs. It would be proportional.
I have some empathy with respect to the corner. For a short time, I actually lived in a corner lot. Don't buy a corner lot. Snow removal, grass. But
I like that idea, frankly. You could look at it from a marketing standpoint too, and say that the bigger properties, people are going faster generally by them, a small, one sign's gonna get overlooked, and if you have that, you have that time. In the more dense neighborhoods, there's more people going by more frequently, it's probably a slower pace, so, I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I appreciate you
Okay,
pointing
so
that
if
out.
it's per 100 lineal feet of lot frontage or fraction thereof is 1, is that a star? Give me,
100's too high. I'd go at the highest, I'd go 50, I'd say more like 30, maybe 40. 50 is reasonable.
John, are you going to go out and measure this?
no, because I can go to the property mapper on Cumberland County and in moments know what the lineal frontage of your lot is and tell you can have 2 signs, 3 signs, 1 sign, 4 signs. It's real easy.
So, can we advance this and go, I mean, there's not too many lots with 100. I would say 50 to get it to the hearing would be okay, and I don't think that's unreasonable. 50 feet's a long ways.
So if I'm understanding this, so what we're going to do is we're going to put something in writing and get it to you to approve before it goes to the hearing, just to make sure we understand what everybody wants. But what I'm hearing, as far as number of signs go in a residential area, or I guess it could be any zoned area, will depend on the frontage. And it would be 1 sign per use, per same candidate, for every 50 feet.
That
correct?
Oh,
would be our starting point, I think, just to kind of get us off the,
Although that can be more restrictive than even just allowing 2. I'd be in favor of the lesser restrictive.
you mean, just
Going back to
two.
your suggestion of doing 2 per candidate. I'd be fine with either of those things to go to public hearing, but note for the record, I remain opposed to the limit.
Either of what, two, no, I'm not.
So Mr. President's proposal of a limit of 2 signs per candidate, or Mr. Evy's proposal of 1 sign per 50 feet of street frontage. I'd be amenable to either to go to public hearing, but noted for the record that I remain opposed to the limit.
Right,
Okay.
and it's rare that, I don't think many people are gonna have 10 signs if there's a 2-candidate limit, because generally speaking, most residences will find a candidate they support for whatever reason, maybe 2, even if there's a big field, and support those.
Yeah, the only reason I have ever had multiple signs in my yard is because it's different candidates.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, but not everybody does that. So I think the 2 maybe,
Would you like us to draft it? In other words, the whole point of this discussion is for you to give staff some direction on what to write that will come back to you, and you then to get to vet it again and decide whether or not you want to authorize us to send it out to the planning agency and advertise a hearing. We could write it both ways and get it out in a document, and then you choose which one you want to go
I think it's
with.
wise that we pick one, and we're kind of a little gridlocked because we have 4 of us tonight, but so I would say if there's no objection, let's just get to the 2
Okay.
total, no linear footage calculation, and draft it that way, and then we at least can have
Okay.
something concrete.
So that's two signs per
Candidate.
property, per issue.
candidate.
Per issue or
Total.
candidate.
Right.
Got it. I'll put
He
it,
can speak for himself, but now I'm kind of thinking about that. We got to this linear qualifier based on a large property in the township. That 2 signs would get potentially lost on a larger property. That's why I was very interested in the idea of measuring it off, because then we get away from the 2, and there probably aren't enough people surrounding those properties that will take exception to somebody having more than a sign in their yard.
That's making the assumption that we're assuming a standard sign too, so we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. I reserve the right to come back to this thing.
I think you should. Because I think you might, yeah.
and I will point out that if we do get to a point of consensus to send whatever document to the planning agencies and have a public hearing, either through public input or maybe you having second thoughts, you can always direct revisions after the public hearing. Then we have to reboot it and have another public hearing with the substantially revised or substantively revised text. So you're not locked in because you make a decision tonight or at a subsequent meeting.
Okay.
So that's that. So we've done bullet points 1 and 2, and your guidance on 2 is 2 per issue or candidate per property as a starting point. So I will let you know at the third bullet point, just for historical background, the reason why the 3.5-foot height limit within 10 feet of a right-of-way is in the ordinance, that pertains to any sign of any freestanding sign that we allow. The theory is you're sitting in your car, you're pulling out of a driveway, and there's a sign out near the right-of-way line that you could theoretically see over it or around it. So that's, I'm just letting you know that's the basis for that being in the ordinance.
So is that the top of the sign?
Correct. Height above ground level of the highest part of the sign, 3.5, and that's, I
Is
mean,
that the average sign? I mean, I've had 2 different types of wickers, if you will.
wickets,
Even that.
realtor type signs.
So I've seen, I call them the goalpost type,
Mhm.
you know, where you, then we have the old type U. So those typical, or it's not the typical, it's not the word I'm looking for.
It's a standard.
Standard.
That's-
That's standard? Okay.
And they're typically compliant at 3.5 feet above ground level or less. And we even have permanent commercial signs like the AmeriChoice Federal Credit Union on 18th Street. They got a real low sign because they put their sign right out by the sidewalk. That's an example of why. Because you're pulling out of the driveway, you want to see.
And that's
over-
only if it's within 10 feet
Correct.
of the
That-
right-of-way?
I'm just letting you know that's why that rule's there.
Yeah. So it's not actually talking about the right-of-way, just 10 feet within, or with, close to the right-of-way?
Correct.
Got it. I'm okay with leaving that, I mean, just because it would help solve ahead of time any safety issues.
I'm all right with that. For now. Because we haven't got to the other side of signs. Are we there?
Close. Any other comments on that?
Then you just addressed the fourth bullet point.
Okay, so the next one, where placed at least 10 feet from the right-of-way, such signs may be up to 6 feet high in residential districts and 10 to 20 feet high in non-residential, should these height limits be modified.
And that, again, a point of explanation, the 10 to 20 is variable depending on what commercial or industrial district you're in, and that's a requirement we have for permanent signs. Those signs are typically freestanding or up on a pole, so we don't really have any compromise height limit in non-residential for temporary signs. So theoretically, your temporary sign could be, you could have a sign supporting a candidate that's up, the height above ground level is 20 feet. You don't normally see that in a temporary sign because no one's going to spend the money for the structural engineering and the building permit. So usually they're just temporary signs, so it
Right,
hasn't
that-
been an issue.
But I'm
with-
seeing 6 feet high in residential.
Correct, that's
Yeah.
the height limit.
Yeah, I don't see a need to change that, again, under the idea that we have the ability to give some guidance and present restrictions.
For an old social studies teacher, what is the difference between within 10 feet and 10 feet from?
Nothing.
That word,
10 feet.
10 feet
10 feet from
from.
is a point, and within 10 feet, anywhere between that point and the street. I guess it's implying that from 10 feet, from that point into the courthouse.
I see myself holding his hair, trying to split it. Yeah. back to the Vice President's question, are we going to measure this stuff?
So is there any other comments on that one, to either leave it or pick a number different from it, up or down?
Okay, so if your consensus is to no change for bullet point 5, then bullet point 6 is not applicable.
Right. And then that brings us to the one I think that we're all going to talk about some more. And that's the 6 square foot. My personal
Right.
opinion on that is that's old, that's an old standard, and I don't believe the expectations, again, that our residents haven't really been able to find if they want to be, in compliance. It's hard to actually navigate and find it. I think it'll be easier now, but I also think that nowadays they might be disappointed to see that they can't actually put one of those nylon flags on their fence. And so, and I'm just using that as an example. A couple election cycles ago, when there was a question about a sign in my yard, I went out in various parts around the county, and I actually got out and measured different sizes of signs, even the ones that are slightly bigger than the regular yard sign. I measured some that were kind of stationary, but not like the one that was in my yard, not as big as that. And I found that the common size out there, including these flags, which are common, is in that 3 foot to 4 foot, 3 foot to 5 foot range, whether they're vertical or horizontal. So I think, again, if we're gonna take the ability, and we have the ability to make the restrictions, I think we should relax it enough to accommodate what we believe the expectation is gonna be when people now can go and read something supposedly in layman's terms in the end here. So my recommendation there, and I'm kind of just taking a shot at this, would be the 15 square feet, which would accommodate what I believe most of these newer common signs are if somebody is invited to put one in their yard or chooses to, which would include those nylon signs that they could hang from their fence post.
Mr. President, I would note, a lot of the newer signs we've been saying are 4x4, so I would request if 16 could be the minimum that we would consider.
4 by 4 feet.
4x4 feet.
That's convenient. If you take a 4x8 sheet of plywood and cut it in half, it's 4x4.
I'm also okay with the 4x8 in certain residential areas. In particular, one farm on the corner of Thompson Lane and Lisburn, I think, which was completely reasonable, didn't block anyone's sight. So that's 32 square feet. That's common. We're seeing candidates all over the county having those 4x8 signs, and they're not being pulled down. I'd be okay with that, but to go to public hearing, I'd be okay with 16 as well. I would strongly object to any limit under 16, Mr. President.
Noted.
And point for our solicitor, this is kind of dovetailing off what we talked about last time. Because of the constitutional protection for content neutrality, if you're going to allow an opinion sign or a campaign sign of 16 square feet in a residential district, for example, then you might want to consider that if I have a permitted home occupation, I'm currently capped at 6 square feet, and the solicitor's nodding yes, so I might have hit a correct point, that based on the content neutrality discussion we had last time, it kind of derailed opening up the right-of-ways for these signs. I think the same would hold true on private property, that if you're not content neutral, then you're discriminating against my home occupation sign for my barber shop in my home, but I can put up a 16 square foot sign to support a candidate.
Mr. Solicitor, if I can ask you a question, if we included a duration limit on the larger square feet, for example, 30 days prior to and 7 days after an election, such 16 or 32 square foot limit would be reasonable, which theoretically means a barbershop owner could get a bigger sign for the barbershop for that month and then take it down after the election. Would that satisfy the content neutrality if we included a durational limit in there?
Yeah, but as John, I'm sorry. Right, I mean, as long as you're comfortable with the content, because in other words, that is the problem that you're gonna run into, that it's not just, campaign signs or political signs or opinion signs, it's any sign. So You've got to be careful and then the other thing I've always heard is, and the reason I don't like those duration signs is, who polices that and when do they come down? And you have responsible campaigns and some that are not. And then the other one is that, just bear this in mind, because, I think there's nothing wrong with what you're suggesting. It's just that the other argument, well, I won in the primary, so why should I take my sign down? In other words, when it goes back to April, hey, I spent good money for that sign, I want it to sit there till November. And that's where previous boards always got hung up, because and that's really where we took out that duration sign, because the successful candidate would say, well, I'm supposed to remove this in 7 days. Why? I'm successful for my party nomination. There's an election coming up in November. I want that, I want that visibility till.
Steve, can't we just say because?
Well, but I'm just saying, but the reason,
Over
the reason we.
years, I've been running for election for 35 years off and on. And early on, the sign could not be in the grassy area between the sidewalk and the curb. B, they could go up 30 days prior to the election date, and they expected it to come down within 2 weeks. That's how we always ran our campaign. I thought it was the law. I guess it was the law.
I'm not saying, no, I'm just saying that is permissible. That sort of restriction is permissible. But the reason that I thought prior boards removed the duration limit was, they were challenges, what's reasonable. One court's going to say, 30 days is not enough, I want 45. That's where you draw litigation. Plus the other piece of it is, do you have the responsible campaign? Does the person, have a staff to remove those signs, so they're down by that 8th day? That's the problem you always have. Again, but I think that fits with reasonable, regulation, because that duration time is reasonable. But I know that from prior boards, that's why we removed the duration restriction.
So, I'll go back to and that's not an argument, but my reasoning for relaxing this particular size to the 3x5, and in this case, I understand the 4x4 issue too, because that is half of a sheet of plywood, I get it. But to that is what I believe, like right now, I could ask any resident around and they wouldn't really know, but if you said you couldn't go on eBay and buy that campaign sign, which they are common, or they give them away now, and say you can't hang that from your fence. You just can't. I think that until tonight, I bet you some of the commissioners don't realize that we're in violation if I hang a Pittsburgh Steelers banner outside on my fence.
Absolutely.
On a Sunday.
Packers would be okay.
Okay, yeah. You're lucky we're social distancing. So I just think the general expectation of our residents is what I have in mind here. Again, I have some personal opinions on the freedom of speech stuff and all of that. I'm trying to keep that completely out of it. But I think the expectation of our residents should be met here. And I believe I'm at least probably in the ballpark, or at least I hope I am, that their expectation is something that they could easily acquire, that they should be able to put up during the campaign season. And so that's my rationale to go with that. And if there's if we want to move in any other direction, that's fine, but.
For my notes then, for bullet point 7, these limits shouldn't be continued, they should be relaxed. So the answer to 8 is how relaxed, and for purposes of going to public hearing, 16 square feet.
Well, that's what
Okay.
Commissioner Kutz and
Right.
I have
Okay.
expressed. I'm not so sure, I just want to make sure. I'm hoping this exercise, we can at least be somewhat satisfied, all of us walking out to some degree.
Okay, so I didn't want to be presumptuous that that's all the bullet points. Those are the bullet points that I prepared, that Tom reviewed for your meeting of the 26th. If you have other issues, so be it, but that gets through what we anticipated were the key issues for regulatory matters.
Well, those are the limitations in the tables, and I think that's what needs to be addressed. I just want to clarify one thing as we proceed in drafting this. There was some mention on different types of property. Are we looking at different sizes for, let's say, rural residential areas versus R1 districts. Because, you know, a 16-square-foot sign looks a heck of a lot larger on a front yard in Highland Park than it does out on Thompson Lane. So are we looking at different sizes for R1s versus R3s? Or R2s, I'm sorry.
My view on that is if we had a huge problem in our township, I would say, yeah, we could start going there, but I don't think we should discriminate in this from resident to resident. I think if we wind up settling and the public gets to weigh in, I believe that we should settle on something that's kind of for everybody. That's why I'm not necessarily for the big billboard style signs that you need to install. And what did they tell me when they put that one in my yard? We need to, I forgot the term, construct it or whatever. I thought it was interesting. My wife said, what's this? They're gonna come and erect. I'm like, what does that mean? You know, we didn't know for sure. I thought it was a piece of plastic at first. And so, and it was all good, you know, in the end. But we just, at this point, I think that we should just try to get something reasonable going with what we think. So I think as uniform as possible would be good.
Sure. Just wanted to clarify that.
For fairness.
Good.
Mr. President, the three issues I had outlined for our discussion tonight were size, quantity, and enforcement. We've addressed both size and quantity. The third issue would be enforcement, in which case I think we have two options. One is just enforce it when people call in and complain. The other option is not enforce it unless it's a site distance or public safety issue. That's what we already do for right-of-ways, and perhaps that might ease the concerns of my honorable colleague, Mr. Black, if they were to remain the same and we just didn't enforce it. I'm not sure if that would be something the board would entertain. Again, I'm not in favor of enforcing the ordinance unless it's a public safety or site distance issue. If we want to continue with that enforcement policy, that is another option we can go, in which case we can just leave the ordinance as is and continue to ignore it, which is what we've done for years.
And we're dealing with now private property. We've already abdicated with respect.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't use that term. For right-of-ways. Right? We're not talking about that tonight.
Right. And right, that's correct.
Which, for the record, I'm still opposed to the limits. However, if it saves a headache to go through it, we could just simply not enforce it. One option.
I mean,
I'm curious. I'm trying to find common ground with the Honorable Vice President.
I understood. And how we got to the point with regard to the right-of-ways 2 weeks ago was that I think we all identified we really haven't had much of an issue with enforcement unless it's been a safety issue. And we asked the management, which they did graciously, gave us some guidance on that. And so whether we go to hearing and go through this process or we don't, I would in either case, in the end, I would probably encourage management to also give us some guidance with regard to what we're going to do, because I just haven't heard from any residents that they've been harassed about campaign signs in any direction whatsoever.
Well,
So,
I will say there was, and I don't remember which street, I think it was Letchworth. There was a house down in Letchworth that had a 4x8 sheet of plywood sign in their front yard. We did get complaints about that. And I would tell you that if you pass a resolution, or an ordinance, I'm sorry, and make it 16 square feet in a residential area, and somebody put up a 32-foot sign, square foot sign, we would enforce that. We would contact them and tell them they can't have that.
right.
So, I mean, but I'm not going to go out there with a measuring tape and say, that's 18 square feet, you got to get rid of it. But, 4x8 sheet of plywood is pretty obvious, and it can be a little intrusive, I think.
Right, and it seems in the last guidance that we were given is maintained the spirit of freedom of speech with regard to the campaign season, and so I'm cool with that too. I mean, I would be good with saving all of the rigmarole of going through all this, except I do believe that clarifying things up for our residents to easily understand what's expected of them when they read it should be easy to find and easy to understand. So that would be something I would, if we did pursue this, that would be my main goal, is make sure the residents understand where they stand with regard to our expectations.
Whoever said it, I will concur that as I get around the township, there are more and more opinion signs being erected. and I don't mean to point you up, but are being posted. There are opinions hitting the paper that you can't, it's amazing. I remember it up until a couple of years ago. So that's good that that's included.
So, I mean, so is there a consensus that we could draw? And I will say, if we wind up there, this was not a wasted discussion, but is there a consensus that we wouldn't want to go through this process and that we would just trust in getting some guidance as to how we would handle things moving forward, as we have been in the past?
I guess my only concern is,
But Mr. Eby is going to some trouble of correcting those tables. I mean, you still want that done, correct? I mean, because there was holes in that table, footnotes and other things.
And
that-
bringing it easy,
Yeah,
making it
it
easier.
follows your point of ease for the reader.
Whether you request drastic change or no change to the regulations, I think it's important to update the tables to make it apparent what the
Do we need a
rules are.
hearing to do that?
Yes, because, oh,
So we have to go through it anyway. So I would say maybe that if we're going to go through the hearing anyhow, that the public's going to weigh in one way or the other. If there's anybody with strong feelings, they're going to come in, and so I think that maybe what we've laid out tonight would be a good starting point.
And I think John has it.
You have.
I think he has what we've said.
and Tom has been mirroring my notes too, so we'll collaborate at a staff level. We'll get you something for a subsequent meeting.
So
that-
we'll see it before.
You'll see it in a draft ordinance and revised tables in the neat package, so that if you have second thoughts about a direction you went tonight, or you want to go with A instead of B that you talked about tonight, that you can do that before we publish it.
And it's possible we would come out of the hearing making no changes, and we can revise the ordinance.
Very possible.
Yep.
And I would thank the board for the discussion. I think it was a very good discussion.
Thank you.
It's extremely complicated issue. It can be a personal issue, but it was a very good discussion. And we do have some things to talk about at the hearing. I mean, I think the limitation issue came up, of course, and the size issue came up. So those are going to be two interesting concepts to hear from the public about. So kind of looking forward to it. But as John said, we'll collaborate on a summary of what we discussed tonight, send it to you, and if that's what you had in mind, we will get ready to take it to public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you. That was good discussion. I appreciate the.
And thank you for the ongoing memos that we've been receiving on this and staying up with it. Both segments, the right-of-way issue and the private property issue. Both of you, thank you. And everybody else who put work into it.
And we have not set a hearing yet.
Actually, I think we have,
But we
You
have,
want one more draft, right? We would set the date, I guess, it's your,
that's what I was.
that you'd meet in August and tell us when you want to
Yep.
hear it.
We had a hearing date yet.
what, okay,
The hearing date we had was for.
27.
July 27th for the parking.
That's-
Yeah, that was
that's-
part of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's the perfect thing, so.
All right, Commissioners, we ready to move on? Thank you. All right, next, under the manager.
Thank you. President, in your packet, I included a resolution from 2015 that we had adopted in support of our police department. I did update it with some, with new numbering, although it's really just kind of a guidance document to say this is what we did then. There was some interest in doing something like that again now. Consider this resolution to be a jumping-off point. You could amend it however you prefer. You don't have to adopt anything if you don't like. You can simply do a motion or a letter or anything like that. This was brought up because we did do it in 2015, and there's some interest in maybe doing it again in support of our police, based on everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, and so I've had some discussions about this, and I believe this is a very important topic, especially hearing some of the stories of what's going on out there, not just here, but everywhere. One thing I picked up on today, and Director, correct me if I'm wrong, and Captain, that am I making a good assumption that maybe it would be wise at this point for you to, and the manager, to maybe come up with what we would want to do, and then how we would modernize that language for today? Because we're really, as commissioners, we're out of touch with the everyday dealings of the police work and what's going on. We have an idea of the training and the effort and the professionalism, because we talk about that all the time, and I think we're all really committed to that. And I was just wondering if it would make sense to, so that we know what the, you know, what maybe what the need is exactly, and then maybe how that applies to today's environment, and what we can do best to serve our law enforcement here in Lower Allen Township with a letter or resolution.
President, I think that's a good course to take. We could do some additional things to that. I think that there's been a number of reforms that have been proposed across the country and here in Pennsylvania about policing. Many of those things we are already doing. And I think it would be beneficial to point those things out in any public statement, because it's all about trust and community confidence.
Yeah, and my thought is that it would give us a good understanding to read that, especially ahead of time, and then we can help shape it if we choose individually and as a body, and then I feel like we'd be really serving our law enforcement professionals with us standing behind some of that and understanding it better. If we could do that and maybe work on that over the next couple of weeks, I don't know.
I think that's
I
a
don't mean
good
to-
suggestion. Our police are way ahead of the curve.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so I think what we're asking is just make this more contemporary
Right. Yeah, and
and include some of those standards.
Captain, and we've had that discussion earlier today, and I think it would not be that difficult to do.
Yeah, I would just like to get it right in this environment that we're currently in, and I think we owe it to them to get it right.
Very
So-
good. Well, so we'll work on it, massage it a little, get something back to the board for your next meeting packet. You can have a chance to take a look at it, make your own suggestions on wording changes or additions, deletions, edits, whatever you want. And then hopefully we get that back by the next meeting date, which is July 13th, I believe.
Okay. Sounds good. Captain, good, thank you. All right, so moving on to commissioner reports. Before we go into that, and I'll go around the room completely, starting with our captains, but the executive session, we have a personnel matter, the HIPAA confidentiality, and then the solicitor informed me that there's going to be a B regarding the solicitor. So we'll be talking two matters. The second one will be B regarding the solicitor.
Don't believe we need action on either one of those.
And so we'll adjourn
You can
to
adjourn
executive session. Okay. So we'll start. Captain Bevan, do you have anything for us this evening?
Thank you.
Yep. Captain Crone?
We're running a little light. Circumstances have us in that position, and call volume is definitely. Just for the commissioners, we are running a little light. Circumstances lately have us down a couple of officers, and call volume is definitely going back up. Just today, I was out on the street helping handle some things, but we're definitely seeing we're coming out of yellow wholeheartedly in all aspects of our society right now, and it's definitely showing. Just driving around town and the traffic upticks. And all the things that happened before are now picking up again, the domestics, the thefts, everything. So that's what to expect moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Eby?
As your representative to Yellow Breeches Watershed Association, we had a Zoom meeting last week. We are going to press ahead unless conditions change with an on-creek cleanup Sunday, the 16th of July. There'll be much more information, or August, I'm sorry, thank you.
August, okay.
August, I'm sorry. So there'll be much more information forthcoming. I just confirmed that we do have Fernlawn Pavilion available for event headquarters, and so we're just in the initial planning process of that event.
Thank you. Director?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Director?
Two things. Captain Deeman and myself and Charlie Reynolds were out to fund PFUND, not FUND. They're our ambulance manufacturer. That unit that the board authorized purchasing to replace 174 is in at the dealer. We went out for final inspection last Wednesday, and it is a really nice piece of equipment. So we'll be anxious to get it in, hopefully maybe even next week. I think Tony said we had, yeah, and if so, at the, we certainly will have it at the next board meeting out front, that everybody can take a look at it. But it's really good. It has the new litter version in it that the board approved, and we'll be happy to show you that and show you what the difference is between the two. So that's moving along, and I think looking really good. It'd be another banner thing for our EMS, and very functional as an operational unit for treating patients as well. So, and it has the infrared, not infrared. It has the ultraviolet light built in. So basically what that does is we've done that installation on other units, but it actually kills viruses within the vehicle. So I think it's a safety feature for the patients and a safety feature for our personnel. So be anxious to actually get it on premises. The only other thing is I know we're green, but that certainly does not mean lackadaisical in any way. Because we know that there are a number of cases that are still out there, and we know that people come in contact with that. So I just, for the population, I think everybody needs to still be as protective and do everything you can to not become a victim of this, because it may not go away for a while. We certainly don't want anybody to be exposed and come down with COVID. I've stopped, as you've noticed, my daily 209 sends from an EMA perspective, but if something develops or bubbles up, I will certainly send them out again. So it's just kind of I monitor every day what's coming out of the Department of Health. Tony does as well. And anything that, like I said, bubbles up, I'll be happy to, and really, I will share immediately. So.
Well, I was going to thank you for that but now I can put an X through that. I'm happy. Thank you.
Director, are any of the new litters in yet?
Yeah. Well, the one, no. Actually, Tony can fill you in on that there is a plan to do the installs on the other two, because we're going to have, and he's also working on having them, once they're all installed, packaged, because they have to be packaged and sent to the dealer in Jersey that's purchasing them.
There's a bunch of things that have to come into play. We have to get the 174 in, which is out in Pittsburgh right now. When that comes in and that unit gets put in service, then we have to rotate the other two units through to get those installed. The stretchers that are going to be installed in those have to be shipped to the person that's doing the install. And then our fleet has to remove the Furno devices. We're going to put them at Public Works, and then we have to have somebody come in, crate those all up, and then arrange shipping. So it's a process, but it's all coming together, and it will continue to. So,
Would love to see them when they're fully installed, if you don't mind.
yeah, absolutely, it'll be part of it. Absolutely.
It'll be, Commissioner, it'll be in the new rig, because they actually installed one of the new strikers in that rig.
Awesome.
We bought it as part of that purchase. So when that rig is delivered and we have it out front, it'll be there, and Tony and EMS can show everybody how it works and explain why it's just a better stretcher for everybody.
Sounds good.
And that's all I have.
Is that it? Thank you, Director. Solicitor?
Besides the item that I want to wait for executive session, I also want to echo the comments of the staff. It is, you folks had a very good discussion about a very complex issue, and a lot of folks don't know that that's what local government's about. And I like, as a lawyer, that I get to handle constitutional issues from time to time, and with a board that's very thoughtful and gives it proper analysis. So,
Thank you.
kudos.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Flint?
Just one project update. You may recall the board authorized contracts for 2 micro resurfacing projects, one on Hartsdale Drive near Utley Drive on the curve, and the second on Wilson Lane at the curve a little bit back off Wesley Drive. Both of those projects have been completed a couple weeks ago.
Noticed that.
Julie, it's good to see you. Seemed like it was forever until I saw you walking in tonight. So, do you have anything for us? Nothing? Okay. Mr. Manager?
Thank you. Two things. One, there was some discussion, a couple of you had asked, and maybe you stopped by and visited on your own, but some had asked about visiting the Public Works Building to see the addition. If you haven't done that yet, is there any interest in maybe doing that?
Together
Together prior to the July 13th meeting, but it doesn't have to be the same night as a meeting. It could be another night. And if we could meet out there at 6 o'clock on the 13th and visit and then come down for the meeting.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Is that good for everybody, that date? At 6?
What was the date?
13th, your next regularly scheduled public
Yep.
meeting.
Yeah, if you can
So
just
we
get that
meet
out
out
to
there
us.
at
so-
6 o'clock, and they can run you through and show you everything, and we can all make it back down here in time for the meeting.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Very good. The other thing I have is I had sent you a memo in your packet regarding campaign signs, because I know you're not tired of talking about signs yet. That this one had, in particular, was on the enforcement issue. The board had asked for some guidance on that, and although we don't intend to stringently enforce signs in the right-of-way, the idea was perhaps, just as a nod to our ordinance, that we contact the campaigns themselves and say, you know, our ordinance says we don't allow campaign signs in the right-of-way, but take no action beyond that. Just to let them know, put them on notice, you know, that this,
Yeah, I think it's a responsible thing if we have an ordinance, and that way we're not ignoring our own ordinances.
that's what was our thinking, too.
Yeah, thank you. And I saw that, and I figured that's awesome.
And I have nothing further.
All right. Commissioner Kutz?
Thank you, Mr. President. Over the last several months, since really the beginning of the pandemic, I've been intentional about getting out and visiting with our locally owned small businesses and all the businesses in the township. I've very much enjoyed supporting them with my patronage. And tonight, Mr. President, I am pleased to announce the Summer of Small Business Tour that I will be launching. I'll be heading to small businesses across Lower Allen Township and asking them how they're handling COVID-19 and what kind of economic impact they've seen and how we can help. Really, it gives us a chance to listen to how they're adjusting so that we can help create and foster an environment for small businesses and all businesses to thrive. And that, in turn, with a thriving local economy, will help improve the quality of life for all of our citizens, which is our goal as commissioners, to spur economic growth and to create an environment that attracts new businesses and attracts new residents and improves the quality of life. So, Mr. President, I am pleased to be launching this Summer of Small Business Tour and look forward to meeting so many business owners in the community, so many patrons, and hearing what they're looking forward to doing and new businesses and new ways that we can support these businesses and kind of giving them a nod that the township's here to help and see whatever we can do to ensure that we can once again have a healthy and prosperous local economy. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll have more updates on that for you in the coming weeks, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shin?
Yeah, two things. And I don't know who to ask this. I've gotten some complaints from neighbors regarding the evidently a buildup of drones. There were drones, at least over Ross Moyne, and I don't know, maybe they asked me about, and I said, that's an FAA issue, I believe. We don't have any jurisdiction whatsoever into airspace for drones, right? Not really. Yeah. I mean, it got their attention because they really felt like it was an invasion, you know, of our lives.
there's certain things they're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
And if they're, caught doing that, they're not allowed to hover over somebody's private property. They're not allowed to hover outside of windows and things like that, as if they're spying on people.
I didn't see it, but a neighbor asked me about it just, I think yesterday. The other thing I've been thinking about, and my children, who are no longer children, they're 40 and 38, boy, am I getting old. They so enjoyed our Independence Day celebrations out of LACP. Just 4th of July wasn't the 4th of July without our picnic out. I wouldn't mind, I didn't mean this to be a, can you top this scenario, but I wouldn't mind spearheading if we wanted to try to resurrect that. It went away when I was off the board. 4 years I was off the board. Think about it, if you will. I think it's a great day to meet and greet, and see people. There were folks I didn't see unless I saw them out at the 4th of July celebration picnic out at the park. So, if you will, let me know what you think.
Well, I can give you two reasons why it went away. Number one, we used to collect a lot of donation money from the area businesses, and then there was a small donation from the township to make up the difference. And over the years, those numbers changed.
Yeah, I think
We were getting less and less.
I think we got a little fat, I think we forgot about when we could, we forgot about the volunteers, and again, I would not have a problem trying to stoke.
But you should, just what I'm telling you is that we weren't able to count on the donations from the businesses, and we were funding it more from the general fund than anything.
Right.
And there were a lot of people that were not township residents attending that. So.
Well, I don't think there's any way we can keep that from happening, but I just thinking about it, and I wouldn't mind, Tom, I wouldn't mind getting together with you on what was done before it went awry.
To dig in the archives for that,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, we've got a whole year.
Yeah, and we certainly have a nice park to do.
That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Vice President Black?
Dave, there's a lot of talk about there's starting to be an uptick in the number of cases of coronavirus. Are we seeing that in Cumberland County?
I don't know what the day's numbers are now, but, it's not to the extent that we see that around us, but it fluctuates. So that's why I said that I think we need to still keep the guard up. We're not in a position of dropping the guard. And that's publicly as well as privately. I mean, if you're out, the social distancing thing, the 6 feet apart, everything that we've talked about with Tony too. And Tony pays even more attention to that than I do because of his EMS people and exposures. So I know that they've actually had a number of patients now that have had COVID-19 as well. So it's not like it's just gone. It's still here. And as we all know, it's one of those things that's like silent. You don't know it's even around you until you have, and there's a difference between, we just put out actually an administrative order because there's a difference between a contact and an exposure. So we defined those two things. An exposure is, there's somebody that has it and you are, in touch with them and within a space. Contact just means you're somebody, it could be, anybody that's back as far as the audience. I still have a contact because I know that they're positive, but I'm not exposed. So we've defined that and laid out a number of things. But I think, to answer your question, I don't want to call it an uptick. And one of the things that we've seen is that there's been increased testing, and with increased testing comes increased numbers. So, and we've debated, the whole public safety contingent, the captains have debated how there's a distortion in the way that some of these things are presented because they don't really give a good contextual understanding. the whole problem with the fact that 70+% of them were in nursing homes. But yet that impacts the county numbers. And we have some issues sometimes with the way that that was all done and the way it's been presented out, but that doesn't stop you from having to really protect yourself and the people around you from the possibility that you could come in contact and be exposed, so, I think it's still a real problem, and how long it's gonna last, there's no way of knowing.
Tony, are our EMS people still safe?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely, I mean, we are doing everything we can to keep that. We have changed absolutely nothing, as the director said, because, when you went green, now your cases started to move. So it's not like you knew where they were at. Now we're in green, and I don't know who's got it, who's moving around, or what's happening with it. As they're saying right now, the uptick in cases in the nursing home, as the director pointed out, we have Bethany Village in our district is going to be doing testing. They're required to by the state. They're getting ready to undergo massive testing, which we're supporting. And as soon as we get that date, we might see Cumberland County's numbers change. We hope not, but people are asymptomatic. They have no idea they have it, and we're going to be going through that here in July. I think there's a deadline that the extended care facilities have to meet to test their staff and any patient that's is in complete skilled nursing care. So those things are all going to affect the numbers. As of now, we're in good shape. Bethany Village has 0, the Woods has 0, SCIC has 0. So we're doing well. Testing is only going to be mandated at Bethany Village, so we'll see how it goes.
And testing can bring a false sense of security, because at the time you are tested, you may be negative, but that doesn't mean you might not be incubating the whole problem, and 3, 4, 5 days later, you spike a temp, and now you go back and get retested and you're positive. So, there's a problem potentially. Testing says, okay, you have it, self-quarantine, stay away from everybody, but that doesn't mean that you're free to roam, at that point, because you still could develop. That's why there's a 14-day quarantine period after you've been exposed.
Tom, a very practical question. I'm being hit a lot of times. Does Penn Waste still require that we plastic bag our trash inside of the toter?
They have not sent any change in direction, so I'm not saying they won't pick the trash up if it's not bagged inside the toter, but they haven't sent me any direction that anything has changed back.
Well, that's a bad thing for the landfill when it's in a plastic bag. So maybe we should urge them to change that criteria.
Your recyclables will be loose, right? Recyclables are just inside the can.
Well, we've never bagged our recyclables.
No, I haven't either. I haven't.
The actual trash.
Newspapers, paper products, I put it in a paper bag and put it in the can.
But this issue is, instead of just opening your garbage can, throwing trash in, it has to be inside of the bag, tied up.
Yeah, for trash, yeah.
For trash,
Recyclables.
only trash.
Yeah.
And about 2 weeks ago, I was solicited to serve on a panel regarding coming back after COVID. And this was sponsored by PSATs. And we went live with that last Wednesday. There was an architect, there was a landscape architect, and I also served as a commissioner. And there was a safety officer from a firm that does safety planning and so forth. And I thought it went very well. And I used a lot of the criteria that Tom and staff had developed in Lower Allen Township. And it was received very well. As a matter of fact, a lot of people got my email address and asked for copies of it. I talked to Tom and said, hey, are you okay if we distribute this? He said he was. So we're being published now. So it went very well. They could not ask us questions live. There was a moderator, and moderator could see a hand raised, like on Zoom. And so he had many questions during the process, and then I got a few after the process and requests for our information. And one was from Penn Township, and that guy really got into it. He was the manager. So I was very pleased with the way it went. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. For me, first and foremost, I did have, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, I had a conversation with Commissioner Holtzman this evening, and just keep her in your thoughts. She did not sound well in her spirit. You know, she just seemed like she was down. She seemed like she was in a lot of pain. Yeah, and so she's feeling also like she needs to really get the doctors to give her some guidance, I think. So hopefully she will start feeling better, so keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Captain Crone and Captain Deven, thanks for being here tonight. And tell your folks, Captain Deven, we're really grateful. I mean, they're really on the front lines here as well, and going out, having to deal with people, and now the potential uptick coming. You know, to maintain the composure's, I think, difficult to begin with, you know, but knowing now, you know, and I guess I'm starting to learn what green means. And you know, I'm not sure there's been a lack of guidance or not from here, but in general, or I'm just misunderstanding some things of what, you know, these different phases mean. And I guess it's even hard for me to kind of navigate through what we're supposed to be doing and when. And Captain Crone, you know, tell the police officers whenever you see each and every one of them this week that very grateful for their service, and that very confident that they will maintain their composure. And some of these stories I've been hearing about some of the challenges and tests, so to speak, that they're given on a daily basis, especially now. Thank them for maintaining their composure and professionalism, and that's a testament to, you know, what we have going on here, I believe, with regard to training and those programs that we do. And so thank you for keeping an eye on them, and keep, you know, helping to keep them safe too. And so back a while back during our Zoom meetings, we've had a discussion came up about you know, service levels, what that means to the township in general. Not necessarily public safety or any other particular department that we've been, you know, talking about. And so did kind of give the manager some direction, both in public at some of those meetings, that we kind of want to start maybe talking about that. And I wanted him also to be able to have some flexibility, and so it kind of organically comes from him on the onset too. So I'm really grateful, Tom, that you were able to come up with a plan here with this. What he's going to do is launch like a visioning committee of service levels in light of our situation we're in with COVID, and maybe what that's going to mean. And as the staff develops more insight as to what that's going to mean and the impacts there are, he's going to, I think, gather, if I'm understanding this correctly, Tom, you want to gather people from around the community, residents, maybe some business owners and other people, as kind of a discussion over the course of several months, and just kind of discuss and see if there's anything, and that the result could be that, yeah, everybody's kind of cool, you know, no issues with regard. And then I would imagine this would maybe lend itself later then to coming into some discussions as far as maybe some strategic planning based on that.
Correct.
Moving after that. So I appreciate your thought and insight as to maybe taking this step to get us into some strategic planning, because I think it's important that we look at a long-term plan.
The public safety study, the upcoming Parks and Rec effort, that ad hoc meeting, which will culminate in a report as well, plus this, they will all be fodder, I guess, for a strategic planning effort that I'm planning for next spring.
All right, thank you very much for the effort. Lastly, I would just like to thank everybody. We had some good discussions again tonight. Echo those from the solicitor and the manager, and everybody, the commissioners. Always good when we have so many good employees that have length of service here. And when I see 35 years, and I haven't really got to know either Barry particularly, I know Brian a little bit more. It's really good that we have those dedicated employees in our township. So we are going to adjourn to executive session to discuss those two private matters. And if there's nothing further, meeting's adjourned.